All right, friends. Moving on with the rest of section 1 and then on into section 2 here. So, tropical forests, they're going quickly. We were talking about that right at the end here. So here are the major ones that are growing away in North America. It is Mexico, down here in the south, Brazil and Argentina, and then several in Africa and over in Indonesia, Micronesia, Polynesia area. So tropical rainforests are disappearing. Why? Well, a lot of them are being removed for cattle ranching and crops. So what they do is they cut, slash, and burn them down. They grow crops in. The problem is the soil in the rainforest is extremely poor, which we talked about, which means there's not very many nutrients available for it. And so what they have to do is they have to cut it down, they grow on it for a year or so, and then they've depleted the soil, and so they need to move on. So they go and they cut down the next set of crops, and they keep migrating through that process, cutting down more and more forest because the soil's not good enough to sustain crops for any length of time. In addition to that, then the heavy rains come along and leach out additional nutrients from the soil, and so it's an ongoing process, a cycle. Here's the problem with that. At least half of all of the plants and animals live in the rainforest. And so just looking at the plants, 2,100 out of the 3,000 plants that have been identified by the National Cancer Institute as a source of cancer-fighting chemicals come out of the rainforest. So over two-thirds of the cancer-fighting chemicals. And there's tons of other chemicals that are derived from plants in the rainforest. Blood pressure medications and heart failure detection medications and ovarian cancer, malaria, Hodgkin's, and then insecticides and spermicides. So there's tons of different plants that are being used right now that came out of rainforests, and we haven't even identified a lot of the plants and animals in the rainforest yet. So it's a huge source of something that we need desperately. And so this degradation is rapid, and what's causing it? Well, we just talked about that. Not understanding the ecological benefits of this area in the rainforest matters. For crops and timber export, bad governmental policies are creating it in some cases, just poverty and people needing to survive and population growth. Other causes, they're adding roads and they're creating fires and people are settling into these areas, kind of like we settled in the West in the United States, trying to get cash crops out of it when the regular rainforest doesn't have cash crops per se. They're trying to raise cattle in those areas because meat is of great value. Logging and tree plantations are all reasons why it's degrading rapidly. So that's the end of section 2. Let's move on or the end of section 1. Let's move on into section 2. So section 2, how are we going to manage this a little bit better? So first of all, we need to emphasize sustainable management of those things. We need to appreciate the economic value and utilize that. But we need to be harvesting trees no faster than that we can replace them. And it's really important for us to protect the old growth forests. They are such a biodiversity rich area, and they're so vulnerable to issues because they're specialized species and there's a lot of K species present that we need to make sure we take care of old growth. So we need to identify and protect those areas. We need to rely on selective cutting and strip cutting rather than clear cutting. We need to do no logging in old growth anymore. We need to reduce road building through those areas. We need to leave most standing dead trees and fallen timber for wildlife habitat because that is an important thing. We need to make sure that tree plantation is only taking place in deforested or degraded lands. We need to work on sustainable timber growth practices. And we need to include the ecological services to this economic picture we're looking at. All of those things are important in sustaining them. And so one of the biggest policies or whatever when I was growing up was Old Smokey the Bear. Help prevent forest fires. And that was, in lots of ways, worked really too well. It was a very effective ad campaign. And in many ways, many people would say too effective because it kind of had us misunderstand what this idea of fires was all about. So large amounts of highly flammable underbrush has accumulated as a result. We're not having ground fires, which are a natural important part of forest healthiness. So because we're not getting rid of all that underbrush, we're getting larger and more destructive crown fires that are starting. So we need to not just prevent forest fires. Sometimes we need to manage and create fires. So how do we reduce fire damage? Ironically, we set fires. Prescribed fires are fires that are designed to burn away that undergrowth. They're controlled and they're meant to take care of the problems. We need to allow fires to burn in public areas, as long as they don't threaten people's lives or their property, which is an important thing. We don't want to hurt other people, but we need to let the forests breathe, and one part of that is to have controlled surface fires. And then clear small areas around property to make sure that if fires do happen, they're not going to threaten people's property. So fire management improving it. So Smokey taught us that fire is bad, and that is something that we need to change. And we need to reevaluate that logic, okay? So severe fire could threaten 40% of the federal lands due to over fuel buildup, too much stuff on the ground. So that's too big of a number, and we need to work on fixing that. And so we need to do more prescribed burns to solve that problem. We also need to look at how we're using the wood we have. So 60% of the wood consumed in the United States is actually wasted. It's not used properly or well enough. We have inefficient use of construction materials. So we have a lot of excess waste when we build. We have excess packaging for shipping. We overuse junk mail like crazy, which is cutting down lots of trees. We have inadequate paper recycling. Paper recycling is one of the best types of recycling to do. And then we don't reuse things like shipping containers that are just used one time to store some stuff as it gets shipped, and then it's thrown away. And so we need to reduce this 60% number, and if we could reduce that number a lot, it would solve a lot of these problems. What else can we do? Well, we can help settlers in third world countries understand and do sustainable agriculture and forest management of tropical rainforests. We need to maybe look at harvesting sustainable fruits and nuts from the rainforest as opposed to cut them down and grow different crops. This is the debt for nature swap, which is interesting. We there's a lot of people that have debt to other countries, and we could remove that debt or relieve the debt that's on them as a way to kind of basically pay for them to protect their own forests. We need to have an international system for evaluating and certifying tropical timber. So do you have tropical timber in your house? Did it come from a sustainable source? Like I have some wood from Brazil in my bathroom upstairs, but did it come from a sustainable method? And that's an important thing if you're going to buy those kind of woods. And then try logging practices that are gentle. There's ones that can tear up everything around them, and there's ones that are very beneficial, not necessarily beneficial, but not very harmful when you're trying to remove those felled trees. That's it for now. Come back for more later.